everybody. Welcome in to the Maize and Blue Reviews. Good afternoon, Michigan football. Careful. Yeah, that switch goes right there, and we are ready to go on this Monday after a big weekend for Michigan, and of course the Super Bowl yesterday. And now we go a long time before there's any football again, so you do have to deal with that. Luckily, I've got some things for you to look forward to starting tonight. So you're off season, you jump right into it and embrace it if you have the football blues, and it happens at times. It's happened to me, not so much this year. I don't know if I was lucky that I've jumped into the winter sports, and I've been transitioned right out of football, right into the winter sports, feeling pretty good. And now I'm ready. I think a lot of it has to do, to be honest, is Michigan basketball, and Michigan hockey. They're so good, and they've got they're in with a chance. I mean, they're going to be in the mix, but they're in with a chance to win a national championship. Both of them. That's the goal. Nobody's skirting around anything. They're talking about it, and so for that, enjoying the ride, it's helped with any kind of football blues. Now, we're going to be talking about, it was mentioned yesterday, or was it Friday, about Michigan's front line all going in the NBA draft in the first round. Well, I looked at that, and we'll talk about the NBA draft. I'll work through a mock draft and see what jumps out there and see where these Michigan players are projected to go. I did spend whatever it was, 3-4 hours last night, probably just like you, watching the Super Bowl, and I'll tell you what jumped out. We'll see. If you're watching this live, you want to comment in on your thoughts on what stood out to the Super Bowl from the whole thing, taking a look at it, entertainment value, the game, all of it. It's there. But we start with the Michigan weekend. We headed in talking about the Michigan weekend, and we come out of the weekend talking about Michigan basketball. Went down to Ohio State, and they took care of business. They end up winning by 21. They up by 10 at the half or whatever it was. I think it was 10. And then they're sitting here with their best start in school history, and wherever they were coming out in 2026 after the USC game, the Penn State and Wisconsin game, and then a few others where it was like, is this really a team that's going to be able to vie for a national championship? They're back where they have that look. They have the look where they are elevating their game. Dusty May was asked today about peaking, and naturally you want to peak when March starts. You really want to peak when the tournament starts. You can go on that 6-game run. He said they're moving towards peaking. So, that sounds good. He said their biggest jump that they've made, and we know they beat Nebraska, they beat Michigan State, and they took care of business down at Ohio State. He said the biggest jump that they've made is because of the rebounding, in particular, the offensive rebounding. And that had been something that he had been talking about really all year long. So they're hitting the glass and flexing their muscle and getting some offensive rebounds, give you another possession. Dusty likes that, and that has them moving towards peaking. Thing is, we know what they are when you say peaking, because we saw it in that 10-game stretch. They peaked where they looked like, if you took all of the college basketball teams over the last 20 or 30 years and took their great 10-game stretches wherever they were, Michigan was included in there statistically. So we know what they look like at their best, and they're back to resembling that. So that's great news with Michigan. The front line's been incredible. As much as you talk about Yaks, and you should, the 5-tool player, we could spend an hour just talking about Morris Johnson Jr., what he brings to the table. We could also spend an hour talking about the big 7'3" Spaniard, in a day, Mara, who put up a career high yesterday and looked great doing it, not just with his points, not just the 3-point shooting when he knocked down the two, but 2 3-pointers, but his shot blocking and his passing. He is a real weapon. And that's really when I look at those three guys, they're all three big time weapons. And any team would be happy to have one guy like that. I'd say, yeah, this is our guy. Michigan's got 3 of them. That's what makes them so dangerous. That's why when people talk, and they're talking now, Hey, who do you like to get to the Final Four? Who do you like to win it all? Michigan's name's coming up left and right. And they say, just look at that front line. Teams can't handle that size. I know that when you get to March, you say things like guard play and free throw shooting. Those things are very important. And free throw shooting, that's you got to knock those down in big games, and guard play is going to be really important. But you can what helps the guard play is having a front line that can throw you the ball, like Mara was to Cheddar repeatedly, or you have Yaks who's grabbing offensive rebounds and then throwing it back out to Kiddo. All of that, or finding a 3-point shooter like Burnett, or you have Morris Johnson Jr., he's not gonna let anybody dunk if he has the chance to stand up and contest right at the rim, and then he'll throw some down, and he's active, great defensively. All those guys, and rebounding and passing. It's a real joy, the threesome that they have on the front line. That's great for them. So Michigan, they get that dub, and now the poll was just released, the AP poll from today. As you'd expect, they're sitting there at number 2, and things are looking great for them. We'll get to that poll and the number 1 team coming up, as there's big news regarding them. Also over the weekend, I said that I was going to take in the triple header all day Sunday. It just didn't happen for me. I did watch Michigan. I did the post game, and then the Michigan women, who were taking on the number 2 team in the country in UCLA. I did have that game on, but as far as watching it and sitting down and taking it all in, that did not happen for me. But Michigan loses in a close one. They were down big late. They rallied, and they had actually a chance to tie it up, but they lose by 3. UCLA's only lost 1 game all year long, and they're loaded. They got size. You can see that. And Michigan, there's nothing to sneeze at. They're 20-4, and looking forward to March with that team and what they're going to be able to do. Hopefully, I will be able to watch a little bit closer the next time the game is on with the Michigan women. Also in winter sports, you had the hockey team. It was really center stage. 2 games, Friday night, Saturday night down in Detroit. And Friday night, Michigan's trailing by 2 goals in the third period. Number 1 versus number 2 for the first time. And then Michigan ties it up. They get a shorthanded goal by Draper. And then they get into overtime. They get their first power play. That's 3-on-3 hockey in overtime, which I love. And they get the power play, and they bury it. I almost thought that me watching it, I thought they're just being, people call it too cute, just waiting for something perfect to happen, or, passing it around, pass, and not really taking any shots. Well, their patience paid off, and they're probably laughing at me or anybody else that was thinking the same thing, because they set it up beautifully, and they get the goal, and the place explodes, and it's just great. It's as great as it gets in the regular season, beating Michigan State like that in overtime. And then you get to Saturday night, and it was a real shocker about 20 minutes before the game to realize that Michigan's goaltender is one of the best goaltenders in all of college hockey. Got hurt a couple weeks ago when a Notre Dame player named Fears slid into Michigan's netminder and hurt his knee. His name wasn't Fears, but he whatever his name was. He slid into Ivan Kovic, and Ivan Kovic went down. Whether it was an ankle or a knee, I'm not sure. Lower body injury. And afterwards, Brandon Arado said, "Well, he'll be back before the tournament." And it's ominous to me. And I know some others that said, they've taken it from the inside. No, oh yeah, that he will be back, but nobody was predicting that he was going to be back for the Michigan State series. And then 20 minutes before, they sent out the lineup, and then Ivan Kovic's names as a starter. You're thinking, wait, what? Wait a second. Is he really going to play? If he was available to play on Saturday, why didn't they play him on Friday? Things that you think about. The old surprise from Narado throwing him in goal, but putting him out there against a hungry Michigan State team who just lost the night before. But he's that kind of player. I mean, he's a great player. So you're thinking, even I guess he didn't play all that great. They lost 4-2, but they were down. They're down 4-0, 4-1. And I think he probably, if he had a couple games under his belt, I could easily see one of those goals him stopping. But he looked sharp early, and the great news is that he's back. They dropped that game, but Michigan has their goaltender back. For me, I think that's great news because I wondered if he was really coming back or they were just kind of saying that. I mean, sometimes you want, if the guy's just down and he's going to be out for sure, you say it. But then there's the in-between where you say it where you don't want to just put all this pressure on the Peck, who was the backup goalie, the kid from Upper Manhattan. Just throw it all over to him. Hey, we got a national championship team, but we're going to have to ride you. And the possibility he could come back. But obviously, he is back. And, yeah, you wanted to win that game. But there's still a chance to win the Big Ten regular season, which they would like to do, so they would get the bye. And then, the Big Ten tournament. And then you have the Frozen Four tournament, which this year, Michigan, one and done. You'd like to see them in Vegas. That's where the Frozen Four is at. And you'd like to see them win the national championship for the first time since 1998. That's all out there for them. So that's the Michigan weekend on the ice and on the hardwood. I'm going to take some of your feedback to see what the people are thinking about it before we get to the NBA draft, and we will get to the Super Bowl. Thanks, Dirge. Not Ripstar is still on a run from last night. Hey, you get a lot of party favors and chip dip and, mile long sub or however it is, the next day you still have some of that stuff. There was a time, that's when I was single, that my friend, he always had a Super Bowl party. He was Mr. Super Bowl. And I would go to the party and I would always stay the night at his house because it was a big party and I didn't want to drive home. But the point of this was, as soon as the Super Bowl ended, the party would, the people would leave, go home, and then we'd run it back from the beginning. I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years they did that. And so what I could do, instead of thinking about, I got to, maybe take some notes, talk about it on the radio the next day, whatever, at least take some notes on, this stood out, that stood out. And it's just partying. Wow, let's just watch it. Let's let it fly. And then when you have a Super Bowl party, a lot of times you've got, you got your family and friends. They're leaving at halftime. Nobody's really watching the game. Kind of talking over here. Hey, what's Aunt Mildred doing in the kitchen? And it worked out beautifully. Was not the case last night, but you'd always get that extra food. Not Ripstar. He peaked. He didn't peak last night. He's peaking today. Champy is talking about the Arizona Wildcats being number one And I don't know, is he talking? Is this a "I love Bad Bunny" at halftime? I'm not. I'm not bilingual, so I'm not really sure. I'm going to talk about Arizona. I said that, so there you go. You got that going for you, AZ Wildcats. John says, Dennis, you asked Coach May if the team had a psychologist. I think Bryce could use one. I did ask Dusty May if the team had a sports psychologist or if they just relied on, Dusty being the sports psychologist. And Dusty said that they have, as a university, paraphrasing what he said, they have it available. He said a lot of the guys have their own, like you have your own trainer. Guys have their own sports psychologist. Pretty nice. They'll be on a Zoom with them. I like the answer that he had. Somebody asked me that question. I didn't know the answer, so I asked Dusty that. The part where you think Bryce could use one. Sure. My thought on a sports psychologist, if you're a player, you if you're open to trying to get better in everywhere that you can, any way that you can, then yeah, a sports psychologist could be somebody that could help you. There's a time and place where you have to be ready for that. It's like you have to be, you have to embrace it. And I don't know if he necessarily thinks he needs one or wants one. So having somebody talk to you if you're not really ready, I'm not saying that, that he's put off or anything by that. I'm just, just talking. I think what Bryce needs the most is what he is getting. And what he is getting is a year to grow up after he was thrown into the fire. And now the natural process of developing, actually being a year older, to me, we can name probably 10 things. His new head coach, his new offensive coordinator, his new quarterback coach, his training that he's doing with the Palmer camp, being a sophomore. To me, it's the thumb, being a sophomore and having the experience that he had last year. I think that's going to be the biggest thing. The second out of that whole group is not Whittingham or Back or to me, it's working with Palmer and working on his footwork and mechanics, which is exactly what Palmer does. And so he is training, and this was, I'm going to say it's outside his comfort zone. I don't really know what his comfort zone is, but he was working with a local quarterback guru. Now he's working with a national quarterback guru. That should have been music to everyone's ears. So maybe he will talk to maybe he already has. Maybe he has his own personal sports psychologist. We think about what would we be like if we were the big man on campus, we were the highest paid player ever in college, we were the greatest recruit ever. I mean, this is all the things that Bryce Underwood is. Would you have a chef, a nutritionist, a trainer, a quarterback specialist coach, a national quarterback coach, a sports psychologist? Would you have all of that? Would I have a driver? I would have a driver, not a golf driver, a physical like chauffeur, where I wouldn't have to worry about it. I wouldn't need a chauffeur to get out and open the door for me. I just get in and then go ahead, take me somewhere or whatever. That's what I would like. I'd like a driver. John, I think, has a driver. I think John gets chauffeured around. He goes, he's on flights. He goes to these seminars. He gets out. And, sure, it's Uber, but I mean, he has a driver. John says it's great to see the Michigan coaches and players win the Super Bowl. We're going to get to the Super Bowl coming up. Mm, not Ripstar, blanking the clam chowder. Hey, I told you before, I like clam chowder, so I can't hate on clam chowder. I don't know if it's a fun fact or not, but I like making soups. I really like clam chowder, so you would think at some point that would happen. And I did watch this chef prepare a clam chowder, and I was thinking, oh, okay, I could do it. But that has not happened as of yet. But that's on it's a little bit longer list, not the short list of things to do. Making a sports psychologist or making a clam chowder, not Ripstar saying the state gave him a psychiatrist. Yeah, I mean, sometimes that's for your own good. You got to go see them and don't look a gift horse in the mouth, or I don't know if that applies here, but, check it out. Last year was actually a good thing. Yeah, I think so. Here we go. Olympic talk. So I don't know what SUI stands for. Let me think. Slovakia, United International, no. Fithian, no, I don't even know if that's a country. But I like this because if you'd say, hey, what do you think of the Olympics so far? I said, I don't really know much about anything except I saw Bocelli sang Nessadora, the Italian song, which is one of the songs that if somebody on Friday, when I said, I don't know any songs by Bad Bunny because they're all in Spanish, if somebody said, what about Nessadora? I would have said, oh, hey, that's one of my favorite songs. And I don't even know what they're saying. They could be singing the recipe for clam chowder. And I'd be like, it's beautiful. But I saw Bocelli singing that at the opening ceremonies. Thought it was awesome. I saw Vaughn, and I wanted to watch Lindsey Vonn ski the Super G, but then I looked up the schedule, and it was 5:30 in the morning, and I said, I don't like it that much. And then when I woke up, I found that she crashed. So the crash out right off the bat almost on the top of the mountain, had to be airlifted off. So that was my experience, and I just didn't flip at all this weekend. I saw it on, but didn't flip. I had too many things going on to watch it. But I am going to watch Olympic hockey. And so that's a long answer, just a Ripstar saying that it's getting ready to start. So that's it. Okay, here is, I don't have to tell everyone how to transition out of football into winter sports. If you did not take the advice in watching hockey over the weekend, if you're not riveted with this college basketball season, I have found, and I think this is true for everyone, when the Red Wings were good back in the day and they would get into the playoffs, everybody was excited about a chance in an upcoming playoff run and winning the Stanley Cup. But in addition to that, they also were very interested in all the other series in the games, and certainly the ones that the Red Wings could possibly play next. You're into it. You're into the Stanley Cup playoffs when the Red Wings are in it. And then as soon as the Red Wings would lose, the interest in everything else, it's just completely over. It's the same way in the NBA. Pistons are good. You're watching every game. You're thinking about, let's see how the Celtics look. Let's watch the Knicks. Let's take a look at OKC because the Pistons made them. You're into it, and then as the Pistons go along, you'll be into the whole thing. So college basketball tonight, Kansas is playing Arizona, the undefeated Wildcats. And this is the kind of game that for me, even if Michigan wasn't a legitimate Final Four contender, I would be tuning into. I've got a mock draft from CBS Sportsline up on the screen, and the number one player right now that would be taken with the first pick in the 2026 NBA draft would be the shooting guard from Kansas, Darren Peterson. And I've now watched Peterson a few times, and every time I'll watch Kansas play, he's been in and out of the lineup, so it's been tough. There have been a few times I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to watch Kansas, and then, oh, Peterson's out. Then there's been a few times, at least once, that I watched him, and, oh, he had a great first half, and then they don't play him at all in the second half. They're like, well, he's dealt with some injuries, but he is worth it. He's worth watching. He's worth staying up for. He reminds me of sometimes Anthony Edwards, sometimes Steph Curry, Mitch Richmond back in the day. He didn't play for Kansas. He played for Kansas State. But all the Latrell Sprewell, it reminds me of all those guys at times. I love watching him. I'll watch him at any point. And so tonight, Kansas is playing Arizona. And so how about that? Just going to see where that game's at. I think it's in Arizona, which is going to make it tough. More difficult if this was at Fog Allen. I would feel like it is at Fog Allen. Oh, uh-oh. I mean, you got to watch this game tonight. What are you doing? 9:00 tonight. This will be better than the Super Bowl. You hated the Super Bowl, everything. You hate Bad Bunny. You hate Democrats. You hate Republicans, whatever it is. Arizona, Kansas. And a week from this Saturday, it's going to be Michigan, Duke. I know everybody's going to be watching that, but this one is as good on paper. I think you just have to watch Kansas and Arizona. And Michigan go blue 1-3-2-4 wants Kansas to win the game because Arizona's number one and they're undefeated. This is a good spot, right, for that to happen. On the road at Kansas, Darren Peterson, let's go. And then Michigan, and one of the things I wanted before the season was at one point for Michigan be the number one team in college basketball. Of course, I want them to be number one at the end, but I wanted them to at one point be number one in the AP poll. That is the way it feels like it can happen this week. So, got to watch that game tonight. So, let's work through this mock draft a little bit. And thanks to Not Ripstar for bringing it up, whether it was yesterday or Friday, about the Michigan bigs and trying to get one of those guys back. If get one of them back, can't have Yaks back, but between Morez Johnson Jr. and Ade Mara, more on that coming up in a second. Michigan will see Cameron Boozer a week from this Saturday in DC. He's projected to be the number 2 pick. And if you look at different mock drafts, you could see AJ DeBonsa being the number 1 selection. He was the presumptive number 1 pick heading into the season. I watched him in Switzerland play with Morez Johnson Jr., and he's dynamite. This sometimes you have a draft, you say, it's just one player you're tanking for. You're tanking for Peterson. Sorry, I called him Peterson, and it is Peterson. All right, Peterson. So I say Peterson, Patterson, Peterson. You're tanking for Boozer. You are tanking for DeBonsa. So there's 3 players. That's a great draft. If you have 3 players that you feel like could be superstars. And then I almost want to say that I'm going to put Caleb Wilson in this category too. I have not watched a game where Wilson has played, but I have watched the highlights, and he takes one or two steps when he gets the ball on the fast break, and he the athleticism, the body control, the dunks. I'm going to say that there's 4 players that you want to go for. Wilson looks that good. Uh, there's at least 3, but I'll say 4. I'll put him in there. There's Wilson. Let's just work through some. That's why Houston is highly thought of this year. There's the number 1 point guard. Houston's point guard. And then Michigan is going to see Keaton Wagler. Wagler, I say it like that because it looked like Wagler, but it's pronounced Wagler. He went for 46 a couple of weeks ago. He is a lottery pick, 6'6" out of Illinois. See how Michigan does against him. We work it through. Mikael Brown Jr., I mentioned that under 19 team in Switzerland that Morris Johnson Jr. played on. Brown was on that gold medal winning team. He's legit. He's everything you want in a point guard. Love him. Met plays for Tennessee. You notice about all these guys all play in college. Usually it's like, oh, this guy's from France. This guy's from Serbia. This guy's from Lithuania. No, these guys are all playing in college, and that's where you tune in. Even Kentucky. There you go. They've always got one guy in the top 10. Koa Pete, who is going to be in action tonight at Kansas. Reminds me a little bit of Tobias Harris, the Pistons forward. There's Florida's power forward. We just keep going through. There's another player, Houston center, that's inside the lottery. Darius Acuff from Detroit. Michigan wanted him. Acuff playing for Arkansas. And he's a nice player. There's no doubt about that. Just outside of the lottery now, see Steinbach, Michigan saw him a couple of weeks ago out in Washington. There's Yaks. So Yaks at pick 15, they got a picture of him when he played for UAB. But a jumbo wing with two-way versatility. That's what they have to say about Yaks. Yaks could be picked a little bit higher than this, I believe, with an excellent tournament run. But, hey, not too shabby being at number 15. But I think he could get inside the lottery with a big tournament. Braden Burries, he's going to be on display tonight in Kansas. He's the shooting guard. He runs a lot of point there for Arizona. He's pretty legit, too. Obviously, when you're in there, Michigan will see this the point guard from the Hawkeyes. Dusty May said he was watching. He said his Super Bowl is Northwestern coming up on Wednesday. It's Michigan's next game, but he was watching Iowa and Northwestern tape after the Super Bowl last night. We're going to go through a couple of these. There's an Alabama player. Here's another dude from Duke. Duke's always got a bunch of guys in there. There's the first international player, at least I believe. It's Lopez from Mexico. Christian Anderson, so this got a lot of Michigan connections. That's why I'm going through all of this. Christian Anderson, I watched him play in that under-19 in Switzerland for Germany, and I am a Christian Anderson fan. I'm going to watch Texas Tech in the tournament. I'm going to watch Texas Tech in the Big 12. I'm going to watch Christian Anderson in the pros. Christian Anderson has a rare flair for the game, the way he passes. I mean, he is in the upper 99th percentile of people that have a sixth sense when it comes to passing. I love Christian Anderson. What did they say about him? Gives Charlotte a contingency option at guard with high skill and basketball IQ. Sounds good to me. Iowa State made a push in the top 25. There's Joshua Jefferson, their best NBA player. There's a guy, at least NBA draft prospect, Cameron Carr out of Baylor. Keep going through this. Another guy from Duke. So what's that, 3? Are we counting 3? first rounders that Duke is going to be sending at Michigan, North Carolina. There's another one. They got 2. I promise we've got a few more here before the draft concludes. Mullins, shooting guard for UConn. Now, if you didn't, that is a picture of Ade Mara. It doesn't look like Ade Mara. That looks like a police sketch. Say, look out for this 7'3" guy. Anybody see this? You'd be like, okay. But, he's got his ears lowered in this photo at UCLA. He's grown up a lot. Mara looks a lot different. But the news here is that he lands in this mock draft. He lands in this mock draft at 27. How about that? So, and this was done a couple of days. This was done before his cool career high yesterday. Blame me for just reading the feedback and talking at the same time. I struggle at times doing it. There's Mara, and then back to back. Mara at 27 to the Knicks, and then the Cavs go with Morez Johnson Jr., 6'9" out of Michigan. So both of these guys projected to be in the first round. Let's see what they say about Mara. Provides massive size and defensive impact as Mitchell Robinson approaches free agency. Can't argue with him that he provides massive size. Yes, he does. Rez, they say his physicality complements Cleveland's too big approach. Yeah, I think that you can't really argue about that either. Rounding it out, another player from Baylor and then Wake Forest, a dude named Juke. So what about both of these guys going pro? They're in the situation that Yaks was last year, fringe first rounders. Do they think that they take the Yaks road and say, look at Yaks? Maybe they test the waters. They go through the, camps and whatever else. And they'll say, well, see what kind of news we're going to get. A lot of promises and everything else. Yaks wanted that college experience. Yaks, I think if Michigan wins the Natty, I think even if they go to the Frozen Four, the Final Four, I could see those guys saying goodbye. So you want, I don't know, you want one of those guys to come back. You'd love both of them to come back. Wouldn't that be great? Those are where you get kind of the breaks. But I don't know. Anybody talking about, they'll come back. You do get money, but if they really feel like they get an assurance, not insurance, assurance that they're going to be taken in the first round, their agent gets a call. They get that news. You get a guaranteed 3-year deal. That's a lot more money than anything that Michigan could offer. And yet, if they come back and have great years, they could move up. So it puts it into a situation where those guys are likely, I'm going to say, gone. But it's also good news, especially if Michigan makes the Final Four, especially if Michigan wins the Natty. Michigan had to replace 2 bigs last year, Vlad and Danny Wolf. And they did it with 3 guys. Now, that's where you see in that mock draft, you see Duke, you see North Carolina, you see Baylor, you see these blue blood teams. I guess you put blue blood in there with Drew at Baylor. And that's Michigan. Michigan, if you're a big time player out there and you're thinking, I want to win, I want playing time, I want money, Michigan's got those. Now, I feel pretty good about that. And yeah, I know there'll be some people like, what about the transcripts? I get that. I know the transcripts. What about the transcripts? Before we get to the Super Bowl, let's see if anybody's talking about the Super Bowl. I get into the Super Bowl. I just want to get where I left off with the feedback. And I guess I'm going to have to go pretty far back up here. We got a conversation going with a lot of people. Let me get it up to the top here. I'm going to still do it. Yeah, see, there you go. JD does take Ubers. Not Ripstar says AJ Barner got a TD and a ring. Not only a TD, he got the first TD. A lot of time when you're betting, that's a fun one for a Super Bowl. First touchdown. I don't know what that is. I don't know. Not Ripstar talking about cabs. For people that are, and I know I see people are into politics and things like that. I'm going to Madison, not this weekend, the following weekend. And I was talking with somebody and I said, well, I was just grabbing Uber. And they're like, oh, yeah, Uber's owned by so-and-so. I don't take them. And I was thinking, well, okay, you're really into it. But I asked somebody else. And I guess it's kind of a thing. Some people are against taking a cab that's an Uber or they're going somewhere else. So that's it. GDSPE commenting on Switzerland, because I said I watched the under-19 in Switzerland this summer, and he's calling it a mutt country by saying it's got, Italy to the south, Germany to the north, and France to the east. Well, aren't all of the countries mutts, because you're pretty much connected to a lot of them? Switzerland is beautiful. That's what I know. I know that. It is picturesque. That's it. Some wing talk. I did have some wings yesterday. The Borg, I was ready for that during the Michigan State game. Then you didn't show up. Here's the Arizona guy who has a different name. Now he's talking about Bad Bunny. He's saying, I'm sure you were wanting Kid Rock to play Cool Daddy Cool. Yeah, let's get to the Super Bowl. That Mrs. Fithian like Bad Bunny. Let me go and give you my Super Bowl thoughts. Give everyone, see what your thoughts were on the game or anything else that took place. There it is, the Super Bowl up there. I had two takeaways from the game. One was that Drake May was bad. And he was bad right off the bat. His receivers missed some, but he felt like he was locking on. I wanted him to throw the ball because I had some bets with Ramondre Stevenson, and I wanted Stevenson to get receiving yards. I wanted him to get some rushing yards, but not so many. I had just the way things worked out. That's how it was. So I was really locked in on Ramondre Stevenson, and he knew he was locked on these receivers. Like he had blinders on, and then the pass rush was coming at him, and it spooked him. And that was one of the worst displays of the quarterback position in the Super Bowl that I've ever seen in a big moment. I think Drake May is really good, but man, he folded. Part of it was Seattle's defense, but part of it, man, is he was scared, he was spooked, and it was a terrible performance by him. My second takeaway has a lot to do with the first takeaway. It was the Seattle defense. And McDonald, he could line up 4 on this side, and sometimes he'd bring 3, sometimes he'd bring 6. It was a lot like Michigan in 2021. You couldn't tell. This amoeba defense always seemed like they had the answer. Sticky corners. These guys were hitting. These guys were going after it, and it was quite a display. I mean, no points for the Pats for 3 quarters. And, Seattle was going to win that game. You pretty much knew it. I think you knew it at the half. Not so much like Chris Collinsworth in the second quarter says, this sequence will make the game. I'm thinking, what? He didn't have a great game. But those were my two takeaways. My third one is that I knew everybody would be, because there weren't points and there are a lot of 3 and outs and that it was not going to be a great Super Bowl, and it was not a thrilling Super Bowl with fireworks and points and all that. I'm not going to be over here telling you, it's like, I really like defense and I like punting, and I don't mind a defensive battle, but it was as much May folding as it was Seattle's defense. You give them credit for that, but those are my takeaways on the game. I'd never heard of the national anthem singer, but my wife, somebody asked about Mrs. Fithian. She was excited when she saw the dude up there on the keyboards with that, the brown leather jacket. I said, "Who's that?" She told me, which I forget his name already, but she was very impressed with he's got perfect pitch, which for people that are really into singing, there's not many people that have that kind of voice. And so we were treated to somebody with a perfect pitch. Towards halftime, I don't remember what I was doing, but I left, and then I came back up and I sat down, and Bad Bunny was on, and I sat down. I said, "All right." And I looked and I said, "I'll be damned, Bad Bunny looks just like Ricky Martin." And my wife didn't correct me. She said, "Yeah, he does." I said, "Yeah, I guess I didn't really know what I didn't know what Bad Bunny looked like." And come to find out, it actually was Ricky Martin. After that, I guess he was making a guest appearance. I didn't know, but I don't know. I don't know much Spanish, so I don't really know what Bad Bunny was saying. I did hear from a friend of mine today named Alejandro, who was saying that Bad Bunny was swearing up a storm and they weren't deleting. So it was, Bad Bunny was cussing up a storm in Spanish, but nobody knew, I guess, except a few people that understood what he was saying. But you don't always have to know what they're saying to enjoy it. But with all of that, I think I could. Here's my somewhat impersonation of Bad Bunny last night. Sing a bunch of whatever that you're saying in Spanish, and then just say, "Hey, hey, oh," a little more Spanish. "Hey, hey, hey." He said "hey" a lot, and I think I almost got it down. Da 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 da. Hey, da 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 da. Hey, hey, oh, hey. There's my Bad Bunny from all of that. But people never like to hear about, they always say this, nobody wants to hear about your fantasy team. What's the other thing? Oh, nobody wants to hear about your bracket. Well, I needed Ramondre Stevenson under 38.5 yards. I bet that big because I hedged because I was going to win this fantasy league playoff with 20 people in it. And I only needed 4 points from Ramondre Stevenson. And every 10 yards rushing or every 10 yards receiving, you get a point. And so if I didn't get the 40, I was going to lose. So I hedged and I found an over and under on his rushing, and it was 38.5. Now, if it would have landed on, if he would have just had 39 rushing yards and then less than 9 yards receiving, I'd have lost everything. I guess I think I would have lost everything. But that's not the way it worked. But it left me not knowing I was down until the fourth quarter. And finally, they started throwing the ball to Ramondre Stevenson, and he only ended up with 20 rushing yards. Well short of the 38.5. I've never done this before. I hit the hedge. I hit the first place for fantasy. I hit both sides. I bet the Seahawks straight, laid the 4.5. It was only for a couple bucks on that. And then I almost hit a same game parlay. I had the Seahawks minus 4.5. I had the under, and then I had Kenneth Walker. Now, when Kenneth Walker was running into the end zone, I guess I wasn't thinking if that would have sent it over, but I needed him to score a touchdown, and I was thinking I was going to hit everything. And I'm not sure. Maybe I would have. I'd have to add it up. But that was 2 minutes of me doing what they say not to do. Yeah, Mrs. Fithian didn't have much to say about Bad Bunny. She agreed with my point on Ricky Martin, and that's it. Oh, Kid Rock was lip syncing. I'm not sure. We got some political arguing going on here. Um, the I don't know. Keep it classy. Yeah, I don't know, and I don't know about. I think people take the game and the singers too seriously. It's a football game. I know it's a Super Bowl. It's Americana, and who Roger Goodell picks, I guess, means a lot depending on what side of the aisle you're on, and all of that, maybe everything. But I wasn't into it that way. This used to be Wild World of Sports season, always with an appearance by the Harlem Globetrotters. Well, Dirge, you must be, I don't want to say old, but older, like me. I call myself old, but over 50 or whatever. I used to love the tragedy. Wait, how did it go? Dirge? The thrill of victory. And then they would show somebody like lifting a huge weight over there. And the agony of defeat. They would be going over the ski jump and the guy would be tumbling off this. And it fired you up. But, the Olympics back in the day were, depending on if it's in the Eastern time zone, I find it more interesting. Like I said, if something, I would have watched Lindsey Vonn run on Sunday morning, but not at 5:30 in the morning. My Olympic exposure, again, to go back, my Olympic exposure has nothing to do with Milan. It has to do with a Netflix special on the Miracle on Ice team. Now, when I saw it said Miracle and Netflix, I thought that they were replaying the Kurt Russell movie, the Disney movie, which was great. I saw it one time, and I even thought, I'm going to watch it again. But then I found out that no, this was actually a documentary, and this has nothing to do with Kurt Russell. And this was they have footage of the games, and they talk to the players that are still alive, many of them. There's Herb Brooks, the coach, passed away in '93. A story about him, but A+. Now, I'm a Miracle on Ice fan. I loved it. It got me into hockey. And so watching these guys all of these years later, now these guys are in their 60s now, and they're watching footage and going through the stories, and it's done. It's great. I got Al Michaels there talking about the broadcast in Lake Placid. It's I give it an A+. It was great. My quick story is that Herb Brooks was the coach. And actually, Kurt Russell, who was in one of the Super Bowl commercials for Mick Ultra, the skiing one, at the one point, he's having the guy, wax his skis, and he's saying, again, which is him playing Herb Brooks in the movie Miracle. If you saw it, you knew what was going on there. But here's the point. I once had an encounter with Herb Brooks at Yost Ice Arena. They told me, hey, we need an intermission guest. Herb Brooks is standing over there on the stairs. Go get him and ask him to come on. So I went over there and said, hey, Herb, would you come on? And he did. He was in the broadcast booth, and he did the interview, and he went back to where he was at on the steps, and I was at the restrooms, and I was going back to the booth. And I looked over there, and I saw Brooks all by himself. And in the corner on the stairs, not sitting down, watching the hockey game. Now, I went back up and I said, hey, coach, you want to come in the booth? We've got 4 or 5 extra seats in there, all kinds of seating for you. We'd love to have you just come in there. And he said, no. He said, truthfully, I like watching the game from the corner. It was like Yoda talking to me or something. I'm listening to him. It's like he's telling me something. And it stood with, obviously it stayed with me all these years. But he says, in the corner, I get a lot of film of watching the game from the red line. He said in the corner, it's a different vantage point. He said, I've grown where I really like watching it from this vantage point in the corner. But thank you. Something like that. I don't know if he said thank you or not. I think he did. He was gracious, what I remember. But I was just, wow, Herb Brooks. I wanted to be like everybody else. Go up to him and be like, I love you, Herb. You're awesome. But, I just kept my composure. All right. I left. That was my interaction. It was like, I guess I did meet Herb Brooks, but it's not my buddy or anything. But it always, when I would go to games and then I would go to some hockey games, I would tell people that story sometimes. And then a few people were like, yeah, that's right. You get that angle, where you're in the corner. I'll be like, oh, yeah, Herb Brooks, told me that. Well, during the documentary, one of the players said, the thing about Brooks is that he was a great coach, and he made it where it was us against him. And he said, but Herb was a loner. Herb liked to be by himself. Herb would never come over and be involved in the group. And I was thinking, was Herb Brooks, was it really that he liked the vantage point, or is it because he liked being alone? Maybe both, but I hadn't thought about that. I had my Herb Brooks story. And then I watched the documentary all these years later, and I'm thinking, oh, maybe Herb liked the vantage point. Maybe Herb didn't want to be around a bunch of people that were always slapping him on the back, being like, yeah, go USA all the time. Whatever. That's my story when it comes down to Herb Brooks. All right, we got some. I'm not getting into the argument back and forth. I did tell a Scott Perry story back in the day. I'm glad not Ripstar, remembers that. Scott Perry was good to me. I liked him. The Bad Bunny performance seemed way more patriotic. I don't have anything to compare it to. I saw a still picture of Kid Rock wearing jorts, but if he was wearing an American flag, would that mean that it was more patriotic? I don't know. Mojo and Mara, get them both back. Sounds good. Andres says bringing people together from all backgrounds is not patriotic. Here I said I am not actually going to talk about this, but that's what everybody's talking about here. All right, let's go to Hadley, who says upset alert. He's talking about tonight's Kansas game. He says Kansas beating Arizona. Also, your thoughts on the Super Bowl commercials. I thought they sucked. Bring the Bud Bowl back, the Coke Pepsi Wars, and the Dorito commercials. I'd say, amen to all of that. Yeah, I'm going to be rooting for Kansas tonight. I think that I saw somebody put a tweet on, the commercial sucked this year. It's over. I'm thinking, this is a tweet from 10 years ago. This guy had 8,000 people liking it. It's okay. Where have you guys been? I don't think I've liked a commercial for 10 years, 20 years. It used to be a thing where you'd sit there and you'd just be like, it's awesome. But there wasn't much of that. And because there's not much of that, I don't stay and make it a point where I say, I've got to see what's going on here. I see a lot of DraftKings commercials. So that's not really grabbing my attention. I watch a lot of sports. I've learned how to, filter those out. I know they want you to play. I know that they'll give me $150 if I'm a first timer for $5. But, going back to my wife, they had the one AI where they had them in the donut shop or whatever. And I don't know, it was more creepy than anything to me. But then at the end, Tom Brady peeked in and my wife was, it's awesome. And she was the one that was telling me it was creepy too, but she liked how it ended, so I don't know. As much as, that AI and it's taken over and I'm watching this commercial, I'm like, AI sucks. These commercials blow. That's what I thought. Yeah, bro, what happened to the one where now we're, Hadley, where's Cindy Crawford and the Pepsi machine or Britney Spears or something like that? We didn't have any of that kind of, or the, what was it, the Clydes, or give me some puppies, give me some animals. Bocelli, did I call it opera? Sorry. I screwed that up. Whatever kind of singing it was. Da, 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 da. Still Pavarotti. I think Pavarotti sang at the last time the Olympics were in Italy, and he also sang Nessadora, I believe, and he was awesome. I'm Bocelli, Pavarotti. I mean, that's about as good as it gets. Yeah, Pavarotti passed away a few years ago. Bad Bunny, as American as you can get. All right, if it's just all Bad Bunny, let's see. American is the official language. English? What are we talking about? Somebody talking about gaslighting? How about that Kansas Arizona game? I think that's all this is. This is a sports podcast. That's right. It is. But I'll take a few more if there's anything else. Checking in on a knife fight. There's an Underwood question. Commenting on the Underwood situation last year, the thing that shocked me is that Michigan did not invest in their young quarterback by hiring a quarterback coach. That, to me, was very surprising. Yeah, I think this is overblown. I think it's a nice talking point for Michigan, both Whittingham when he was on with Urban Meyer. People have seen that, and Meyer was, they didn't even have a quarterback coach, and people have been like, oh my God, they didn't have a quarterback coach. And yeah, they didn't have a quarterback coach. They actually did have a quarterback coach. His name was Chip Lindsey, but he was the offensive coordinator too. I know, and I know this isn't his best moment because Drake May sucked last night in the Super Bowl, but Lindsey developed Drake May, and not one person, and they have, I don't know their names, but they had at least one or two guys that were dedicated to coaching Bryce Underwood. And they had the guy that developed Drake May into a top 3 pick. So all of this now that they've got flipping Coy Detmer and his mustache, and that, this is going to be some kind of magic. Oh yeah, dedicated. I'm just, it's not hitting with me, but I don't know. I know, and there's nothing against you, Vaughn, because that's what most Michigan fans, they're saying. It's just not hitting with me. The biggest thing is not having a dedicated quarterback coach. Maybe, in fact, I would, you always hear about continuity. I would rather have continuity. If you had Chip Lindsey, if none of the stuff with Sharon ever happened, who knows what would be going on behind the scenes, but they'd be talking about, the continuity at least is good. And Chip Lindsey, he developed Drake May. That would be fine. And maybe they would have had then a dedicated quarterback coach to come in, but it's not at the top of the list. I think what's more important is that he has gone and broken away from his local quarterback guru and is out working with Carson Palmer or Carson Palmer's brother at his camp that teaches and works on the technical aspects with footwork and mechanics. That's what he needs. And so it's not necessarily it's so the Detmer part, it's just a name only. Oh, he's got a dedicated quarterback coach. All right. Working with the footwork and the mechanics is what he needed. And working with Palmer, who has worked with a number of NFL QBs. I would say the same thing if he went with House, who's also, if it's not House, Tom House, I think his name is, it's House and Palmer. These are the two guys that all of the NFL quarterbacks have worked with or still work with their footwork and with their mechanics over the past 10 or 20 years. And Underwood is working with them. So to me, this is big. Now, it's also something I remember when Matt Stafford was with the Lions that he was asked about going to work with a quarterback crew, and he said, "I'm fine. I don't need. I know where I'm at." And it was the first time I'd ever heard Stafford say something that I was like, "I don't like that. Why not? Why not go out there?" Well, you know what? Stafford ended up going out there, and he said it worked wonders for him. So I think that's the big part for Underwood, not just the name with the dedicated coach in Coy Detmer. Who's to say the dude that was working with him that we don't know his name that was there that isn't as good of a quarterback coach than the dedicated, coach and name Coy Detmer? I don't know. Goat Sense Yo says that might have been the worst offensive line in Super Bowl history. I say that jokingly, but also seriously. No, the Pats' the offensive line with a sieve. You're not joking. They look terrible. They caved in, couldn't block anybody. Worst quarterback performance, worst offensive line performance, worst offensive performance. When I was growing up, most of the Super Bowls sucked, honestly. And then we got to Tom Brady. And suddenly the Super Bowl started being great and close and nail biters and even in over, it was awesome and ushered in this era where actually the Super Bowl was great. Most of the Super Bowls when I was growing up, there's one, Montana against Cincinnati, took them down in the last 2 minutes. Montana was in the huddle and said, hey, there's John Candy. And they threw the ball to John Taylor. But most of them were over by halftime, kind of like last night. McDonald, it was a masterpiece. That's it. That's the feedback. He is a defensive genius. That was his masterpiece. I'm in a total agreement with that. And it reminds me that I actually just threw a couple photos of Mr. McDonald up. I didn't stay for all of the I tuned out McDonald. I've got a picture of him on the left where he looks like he's about to sneeze, but what he was doing, it appeared, is that he was just taking it all in. He had just won the Super Bowl, and he was feeling it. And looking at all of the confetti blowing around and all of that. And then the picture on the right, he looks like he's about 12 years old, and he's holding up the Lombardi trophy. But it really was as the Andres, who was going by, had this golf deal going on for a while, but he's back to being Andres. It really was a defensive gem. It was a masterclass in the timing. I am right with you on that. I've been there, dude. What are we talking about? Switzerland? I've been to Switzerland. Like I said, it's beautiful. It is beautiful. In fact, it feels like you are in some kind of different dimension when you're driving there and you look. And it's all green, and they got these huge mountains, and then you look up and you see in the distance a waterfall. And you say, this isn't real. This is like, this is magical. It was a long time ago. It felt like that then. Dennis, you should like a defensive battle. Haven't you been watching Michigan all this time? Yeah, I didn't mind the Super Bowl. I just know how people are going to act when you have. But even though it was in addition to, I'll credit Seattle, May crapped his pants. What else can we say? This is true. Jay Harbaugh, punter, was awesome. Of course, they were kicking. You thought maybe the field goal kicker was going to be the MVP for a while. Jay Harbaugh is great. Ricky Martin. Yeah, it just was bad. It was bad timing for me, Rip, because I came up and I'm like, oh, okay, Bad Bunny's gone. And I'm like, and I had never seen what I thought. Like I said, I'd seen him with Kendall Jenner before, but I really wasn't focusing on Bad Bunny. So when they had the thing on him, I was like, damn, he looks awful lot like Ricky Martin. And then I didn't find out till today that, oh, that actually was Ricky Martin. I won. I won on the Super Bowl. I'm very excited about that. Oh, Switzerland hockey. Got to be able to take care of them. Do it. I'm going to take 3 more. I'm going to go to the. Oh, sure, we get this one up. How about that? Michigan Go Blue 1324, who is what are you, a catamount? The catamount says, sounds like he's out of some kind of hardcore drug. He goes to Vermont, I believe, are the catamounts. He says, Michigan legend Zach Charbonnet with the ring. In all seriousness, great to see a story like Sam Darnold. Thanks for the great show, as always. Yeah, I liked Zach Charbonnet when he was at Michigan. It was a crowded backfield, and he left. Didn't like that. I don't like guys leaving, but he did all right. He's doing all right in the pros. He got his ring. Sucked that he tore his ACL. Paved the way for K9 to have a great playoff, and he's going to be out next year talking about Charbonnet. But, yeah, you get a ring, get a ring. Put that thing out. Can't take it away from you. And you say it's great to see a story like Sam Darnold. So everybody had given up on Sam Darnold. Everybody bagged on Sam Darnold. Myself personally, after I watched Sam Darnold put up an MVP type year last year until the last game of the regular season when he looked terrible against the Lions, and then he went into the playoffs and when they lose to the Rams or whoever it was, he didn't look good in the playoff game either. I understood why Minnesota moved on from him, even though they offered him, I think, the same amount of money that Seattle. Darnold was like, no thanks. You guys drafted JJ. I'm out. Nice move, but yeah, somebody that they drafted really high, but was passed around, looked like more of a backup than a starter to then find himself in the winner's circle and winning the Super Bowl. Yeah, not bad. And is it the same year that Sonny Jurgensen just passed away last week or the week before? Who I believe was a redhead. You got that going. Goat Sense Joe says, I hate that I can't hate on JSN post-college like I do with Stroud. Yeah, I get that. I mean, not everybody. All right. I said 4 more. I tried to get to the end of the line and never made it. Here's one. A lot of emojis in here from Wishes the Great. He is saying congratulations to Coach McDonald, Michigan man, now Michigan man, Super Bowl winning coach. Go Wolverines. Jay Harb said he'd be a head coach at Michigan if he ever got the offer. The timing's got to work out. And I would not. I would take Whittingham or Harbaugh. I actually had Harbaugh mentioned. I think the time, probably not the time that people like to hear this, but it's never a good time. It was the right move to go, even though Jim Harbaugh and everything else. It was he's his kid. It's not Jim. It was time to move away from Harbaugh. So, but could he ever come back? Sure. Okay, we got one more after this one. Smash says Kenneth Walker III. Did you root for him, Dennis? Oh, I was rooting for him. I had him down for anytime touchdown, and I'm not like most Michigan fans. I don't hold where you went to school against you. I'm not looking to put some zinger on Twitter. Now, look, if Kenneth Walker didn't win the MVP, would Michigan fans have stuck it to Michigan State fans saying, hey, he didn't deserve to get to New York and he didn't deserve to win the Super Bowl? Ha, ha, ha. You know, I know that's part of the fun. I get that. But I don't know why I've missed that. The trashing of the opponents always and nonstop. I didn't go to Michigan, so maybe that's why. I believe that when I was in high school, when I was in junior high, I was going to Livonia Churchill a month before the season. I moved across town to Livonia Franklin. And then the first year when we played football and we played Churchill and we lost the game and we're lining up against the crosstown rivals and you're shaking their hand, all of those guys, 75% of them, I had spent the entire year last year at gym class, at school, on the bus. They were my buddies. So you know what they were doing? Hey, stop it, pat me on the back, and, say my name. And when I got done with that line, they came up to me, my own team, and said, oh, why don't you just go over there if you like them so much? And I was like, dude, I mean, I know it's a rivalry. And guess what? All 4 years, whenever we played Churchill, I wanted to beat them more than anything because I knew all those guys, but I wasn't into the petty rivalry stuff right there. Oh, I'm not going to shake these guys' hands. They're my friends. And then when I graduated, there was some pickup basketball being played, and it was at the school. And the one guy said, you probably won't want to come because it's run by a dude from Stevenson. And I said, I don't care. School's over. School's out. Well, when I got in there, the dude that was running it, we ended up playing on the same team. We were pretty good friends. And people couldn't believe it. Oh, I don't know. What are you guys? Different schools? And I'd always joke with them. Hey, I'd come over and take all your guys' girls over there, the rich Stevenson girls. But we were friends with them, but people didn't understand that, couldn't have the connection. So I'm not like Michigan fans where I continue just to hate some of my favorite players. I love Chris Spielman. Loved him. Actually liked him in college. I like Clark Kellogg as a basketball commentator. I don't necessarily like Desmond Howard as a commentator. There's nobody that's a bigger fan than me than Charles Woodson, but Charles Woodson waving his flag around on game day, that really doesn't do it for me. So all of the stuff that because you're a Michigan man or you went to Ohio State does not mean I hate every single thing that you do. And if you went to Michigan, it doesn't mean that everything you do when you walk on water. I evaluate it afterwards for how things are. And it reminds me of one other thing with Fears for Michigan State. Now, Fears was dirty against Michigan. He got called for the flagrant when he went after Yaks. That was a dirty play. He got called for it. All right. But he tripped him, which is as dirty as it gets. Tried to trip Yaks. And then Dusty had some things to say about it. And then, he was more dirty against Minnesota, and it looked like he tried to get a trip in against Illinois. Well, you know who's tripping out are all these Michigan State fans that are in the media that are all attacking Dusty. Oh, Dusty, this is what he meant. And it's all garbage. They are just complete homers. Well, that's what fans want. They want total homers. But in these things, it just loses it. I look at these Michigan State guys, I'm like, you guys all have a big clown nose on. You guys have no idea what you're talking about. But you know what they would say? Oh, it's the same thing with Michigan. You're right. You got a bunch of clowns that can't disseminate what's going on, and everything gets blurred. Fears is dirty. A state writer who covers the team should say, you know what? He has been up these last 3 games. That stuff's dirty. It doesn't matter if Michigan or not. But the Michigan State fans would be like, oh. And it's just like on the Michigan side. There's still half of you out there or more who would say, Connor Stallions, what did he do wrong? Well, you guys, that's all anybody's ever done is tell you that he hasn't done anything wrong. All these Michigan homers and honking their horns and everything. And that guy is a Machiavellian egomaniac. But that's just where we're at in sports. And so you like it. You just know that you're playing the rivalry part. F. Kenneth Walker III. I wish he would have got snubbed and not got the Super Bowl trophy, so I could have sent a tweet to, somebody from Michigan State. I wish it would have gone to A.J. Barner for scoring the first touchdown. Or the defensive as a whole, so that would have shown more of a light on Mike McDonald, the Super Bowl winning coach, rather than the Smarty. But, there you go. Everybody, thanks so much for watching. We'd love to see you over on the Maize and Blue Review. I'll be watching that basketball game tonight. Oh, yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. Wednesday's Dusty May, according to Dusty, his Super Bowl against Northwestern in Evanston. I was going to say Chicago. But go to on3.com, join up with the Maize and Blue Review. I'll be over there talking about what's going on with Michigan. Wednesday, putting together a little recruiting list, football recruiting. Some people like that. So we'll get to that. You get on3.com, you get Rivals, you get the Maize and Blue Review, and it's all there. Take your Michigan fandom to the next level. That's what's going on. Thanks so much for everybody for weighing in. Have a great day, and thanks for watching.